Review with me, Fred Indimuli. This morning we're looking at some of very interesting headlines. Sons of their fathers, and this is one of those stories that will be much talked about. The relationship between the two great families that have shaped the destiny of a nation for more than 50 years. When they unite, whether to fight for independence or write a new constitution, they move the masses to great heights of achievement. When they clash, the country trembles. Where will their headstrong sons lead Kenya this season of conflict? That's a big story, a big special on the front page of the Daily Nation. The Standard has chosen to go with the KCPE new radical steps on national exams, curbing cheating. Markers will be monitored every step of the way to ensure transparency and reduce collusion with head teachers. 20 machines, number of marking machines are to be installed in marking centers, which have been consolidated to 10 to improve surveillance. You know, that's some of those things we forget. KCP is actually marked using machines. Surveillance cameras to be installed in all marking centers to track teachers and check interference by external forces, including head teachers. And a photo of President Kenyatta yesterday as he toured one primary school, actually Westlands Primary School here in Nairobi, just before the exam kicked off yesterday morning. In contrast, on the front page of the Daily Nation, there's a picture of candidates at Shikohoe Primary School in Malava, Kakamega County yesterday. And it's very interesting to see the kind of structure that they have to do their exams under. My panelists this morning, Ababu Namwamba, former MP Budalangi constituency, and Karanja Kabag, an advocate and a member of the Jubilee Party. You realize I only have Jubilee Party members on the set today. We have invited Rosa Boyu, woman representative Kisumu County, James Nikal, MP Seme, both from ODM, both from NASA. None of them has arrived yet on set. We still do hope that they are on their way and will be joining us momentarily. Yes, because we need to discuss some things and it will be important for them to be here for that discussion to move forward. But even before then, there are other things of national importance that we could actually bring to the fore with the two gentlemen on set. Issues to do with exams and the story about the lecturer strike on page 7 of the Standard. We could look at that now. And lecturers have gone back on strike. Union demands 5.2 billion shillings in new salary deal as boycott begins. The WASU bosses accused universities of refusing to adjust salaries to the new brackets under the 2013-2017 CBA. Gentlemen, these are issues that keep on recurring. Teacher strike, nurses strike, doctor strike, lecturer strike. When will we ever get beyond this? Because yes, and in all these arguments, there are deals that have been agreed upon by government. In this instance, there's a deal negotiated under the 2013-2017 collective bargaining agreement, and it's based on a 10 billion shilling new salary deal, but it's yet to be effected. Is the government getting into deals too prematurely? Because most of these people, even the nurses, even the doctors, were saying, yes, you agreed, you signed, you're yet to implement years later. That's the problem. That's why we're going on strike. Don't you think we're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? Let's start with you, Bonamamba.
First of all, please allow me just to send a message of goodwill to all our 1.6 million children who are already in the middle of their KCP exam. I'm actually very happy that the KCP exam has kicked off as scheduled.
Actually,
at some point, I was actually apprehensive. I was apprehensive that with the heightened political atmosphere, that these would have a negative impact on the takeoff of the exams. But it's really good. It actually sends a message that things are normal, and that we can look forward to proceeding, going ahead with our normal life. And I wish all our children out there the very best. Now, CBS, you know, once a CBA is executed, it becomes binding. Once a collective bargaining agreement is sealed, then it should be implemented. And so one hopes that before these kind of deals are executed, you give sufficient thought to the implications of the agreement, because once you put pen to paper and you sign the deal, then it's a deal.
Yes.
And the deal is a deal. But I get a feeling that sometimes government is put under intense pressure, and perhaps some of these things are hastily done. I was reviewing the other day. I was reviewing the circumstances that led us to the rather lengthy problem we have had with the nurses, and then you realize that the county governments and the national government, because there's a joint effort, because the health services is a shared responsibility. You then realize that there seems to have been a bit of a lack of fit in the mindset of the county government and the national government at the time the CBA was being signed. But in the case of lecturers and teachers, this is a matter purely of national government, and one would hope that any time such a deal is sealed, then it should be implemented.
Yes. It should.
But the idea I had also that we also need to start living within the realities or living within our economic realities, because these salary deals and expansion of the public wage bill is something that really needs to be managed.
Yes.
Because we can't go on like this.
But Karanja Kabagi, the government cannot seek to pacify a situation by signing a CBA, because it will come back to bite you. You cannot go ahead and sign a deal and hope that pacifies the situation at the moment, and hope that will maintain the peace, because after a while there will be such a kind of agitation, and that's why this particular government is facing strikes over and over again.
Well, first I'd like to join my colleague Mheshimiwa in wishing our candidates well, those who have already done some and others who are continuing to do. I want to wish them well. They have worked very hard and they are looking forward to fruitful results at the end of the examinations. And every Kenyan of goodwill should do everything we can to ensure that these kids who are at the crossroad of their lives, they are given an opportunity to do the exams. So that's my wish. Secondly, Fred, I was a member of the groups that were involved on a tripartite basis way back in 2006, beginning 2005, 2006, 2007, when 5 labor laws were passed, were under discussion. Then Attorney General Amos Wako constituted this task force, and we dealt with about 5 laws, and those laws related to, among others, the Trade Union Act, Trade Union Relations Act, dealt with the Employment Act, dealt with the Employee Benefit Act, dealt with the Occupational and Safety Act, and Labor Relations Act. All those acts were the negotiated agreement under what is commonly known as the social partners. And these social partners happen to be the Trade Union under COTU, the Federation of Kenya Employers, and the Ministry of Labor. These are the 3 partners that are involved. And in those laws, we have the CBA as a collective bargaining agreement that is entered into by and between employers and employees. And the purpose of that is a structured way of negotiating terms of employment. Now, when you hear a CBA has been signed, it is never signed by one party. It is signed by 2 parties. And therefore, the mystery that I find is, why on earth do we keep talking about a contractual agreement not being honored. Now, that was pre-2010 constitutional dispensation. When 2010 constitution was promulgated on the 27th of August 2010, we created under Chapter 15 constitutional commissions and independent offices. One of such constitutional commissions was the Salaries and Remuneration Commission.
Does that change anything?
Now, I'm just trying to give a background. It's very important. Now, what happened? It said that henceforth, the determination of salaries and benefit from the president to the lowest ranking official in this republic comes under the purview of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Now, this is the elephant in the room, and I think we all need to retrace our steps. That's why I'm giving the background, so that we sit down and ask ourselves whether the salaries shall be held, shall be revealed under the 5 labor laws that we had prior to 2010 constitution, or they will be held under the new constitutional dispensation when we create.
You seem to be suggesting that anything that happened prior to the 2010 constitution, including signatures by government, including CBAs, that there is a possibility that they could be overridden by
the point that it's important for Kenyans to understand the background against what we are dealing with. Now, what is happening is that when it is convenient to us, the constitution is our fallback. When it is not convenient to us, then we say, no. But we have the labor laws that says and that. But remember one thing. Under our constitutional doctrine, any law that is inconsistent with the constitution is null and void. Now, where we have a dichotomy right now is Kenyans have not come to realize that we need to sit down and say, what was the role of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission?
Are you saying that we should not be getting into signing CBAs at this point because probably they're not guaranteed under the new constitution?
CBAs is a creature of a different legal regime, but we have continued, and this is where now we need a very good conversation. We need to converse as a country. Do we really mandate the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to be the guiding institution as far as determination of salaries and benefits are concerned, or do we have this situation that we are having right now?
Okay,
and that is a very big challenge, and we need to discuss it.
Bwana James Nikal, MP Seme, joins us this morning. Karibu sana. I was beginning to get worried that you would not make it, and I do understand Rosa Boy, woman representative Kisumu County, is also joining us in a short while. We're just discussing the lecturer strike. They started the strike again yesterday. Now we're saying this is a problem that continues in different sectors, over and over. Doctors, nurses, lecturers, teachers. Yet all these parties claim to have signed a CBA. Yes? And you signed the CBA with the employer, who is government. Then how come we still have this problem? You signed a contractual agreement with your employer, who is government, yet the contract is not being honored. Bwana Karanja Kabage seems to suggest that there is a point of differentiation between the old legal regime, that's the old constitution we had, and the 2010 constitution, whereby CBA is a product of the old legal regime, and probably that's where the problem is. That probably people are engaging in signing deals they think are legally binding, but they're not.
Well, first of all, let me correct. I did not say they are not binding, because nobody has challenged that. What I'm saying is, as a country, we have a problem of accepting which way do we go by.
So we are confused between the previous legal regime and what we are going through now.
And let me tell you, the biggest culprit was the previous parliament. Because the previous parliament disregarded the Sarah Serem Commission in determination of his benefit. Now, I'm hoping that this particular instance
will change that.
We don't have that situation, but it is very important.
Okay, let me come in.
Before the clarification, I think the fact that one set of legislators, or even as a portion of the Kenyan citizenry, has sort of gone offside of the law, as it were, does not really change the fact that the law is the law. And for me, I don't see confusion here. It's just that we are crossing from one regimen to another regimen. And as long as what happens is that when you are carrying responsibilities and any obligation that obtained under the old regime, the old constitutional order, must, as of essence, be carried over. And then be dispensed with, even as we proceed on now to enact the new set of responsibilities.
Okay. Yeah. I think before James Dikal, before you give your comment, I need to introduce Rosa Bui. She's finally joined the panel. Rosa Bui, good to see you. Karibu sana. That's a woman representative of Kisumu County. Now my panel is full and very well balanced. Now we can have
full of men. It's
one third. You don't need backup, Rosa.
And Rosa is equal to 3.
Yes, we can get to the big headlines before that. But
now, the issue with the CBAs, if you look at the CBAs that are giving us problems, they're the CBAs that are actually signed just before the elections. If you look at the CBA that gave us a problem with the teacher strike, I think it was 97. Again, it was signed before the election. The CBAs that are giving us problems with the health workers and the nurses and the doctors was signed in 2013. The CBA that are giving us a problem with the lecturers was also signed in 2013.
Yes.
So what you see in this is actually, in my view, insincerity at the time of negotiation. Yeah, people get into negotiations and they actually went to get the problem solved without looking at deeply the solution, whether it will be possible to implement the solution. They just want to get over with this, let this strike be over, the election are coming near, and you make promises and CBAs in more or less the same way you make promises that you are campaigning.
Do you think CBAs are used by successive regimes as
regimes have used CBAs as campaign tools. I'm quite certain on that. And so when the elections are over and you are in government, or another regime is in government, it has difficulty implementing the CBAs. So what we really, the issue we have as a country is institutions that are in charge of governing our systems. To a large extent, the people heading them are not sincere, and so they do not face the problems as they are. And even afterwards, when you come to the independent institutions, you actually don't see the independence of the institution. They actually tend to lean to the regimes that are in power. Yet, that is the very reason for which we wanted independent institutions, so that they can feel they are not under any force or any influence. So basically, the way I see it, when we sign these CBAs, we are not sincere, and then they come to haunt us.
Yes.
And let me then just go another way. When we look at, say, the Salary Review Commission, it looks at the salaries of public service workers. But one has to realize that we actually are living in one community. So whether people are in public service and whether people are in the private sector, they all are living in the same environment, and the cost and the standards of living affect them. What you really are finding is that the remuneration differences are so huge, or the income differences are so huge. If you look at the lecturer salaries, many people don't believe that those are the salaries that lecturers are earning. You grant professors are earning something 150,000 shillings. They are professors, and lecturers are earning something like 80,000 shillings. If you compare this with other professionals, so similarly qualified professionals in the society at large, then you find that they are really disadvantaged. That creates a tension. And whenever there is that tension, if you are not careful at the time of negotiation, whatever you come up with, particularly if you are not sincere that you will be able to implement it, does not solve the problem at hand.
Rosa Boyu, what Dr. James Nicholas mentioned brings us to another point where in Kenya we tend to tie everything about our lives, about our work, about our businesses to politics. CBA is signing, as you mentioned, successive regimes have used such agreements, such deals as campaign goodies. Similarly, even the workers themselves take advantage of these regimes. Don't you think that when we get closer to an election, because we know the current administration will need the votes, then you tell them, okay, fine, this is when we want this deal. This is when the strikes will happen by teachers, by doctors, by nurses, and by lecturers. Don't you think that is true?
I think if you have good leadership, it doesn't matter if people try to take advantage. But because the leadership has shown that it's wanting, and the leadership has shown many times that it's desperate to win elections at whatever cost, you find that if anybody shows up with a strike, they will quickly and very readily go into signing CBAs. You see, the CBA we are talking about now was signed in March 2017. This is this year, when elections was coming up in August. The real reason why we are quick to sign those CBAs is because we use it as a campaign tool. That's true, because we want to win votes, without thinking of implications at the time that we have to implement. Now, that is not for me, the worker, to think of. It's for you, the one in charge of leadership of this country, to think of. So we quickly sign without bothering to know how we will effect it or what impact it will have in our economy. Now, when it comes to the time that people or workers begin to demand implementation, then we want to make them feel guilty. That how can you demand, yet the economy is not doing well? How can you, now we load it over them with all the guilt. Yet in that leadership position, those are issues that we should have considered and thought about at the time that we are signing those CBAs. But we were overclouded with desire to win and desire to get the votes from these workers. So that is where the problem is.
Yes.
Weak leadership that does things just to get into power without actually thinking of implications and whether the country can afford it or not.
But this problem could continue. Bonababu Namwamba, we've been accused of being a society that is over-legislated. But I see here potential of another piece of legislation coming up that probably you block successive regimes from engaging in such labor agreements probably a year to an election. Don't you think it could be necessary to some point? Because if I am heading an administration and I know I need the votes, I'll sign anything, whether or not I come back and lead the country later.
The panacea to this problem is just to let the Constitution operate. We let the Salaries and Remuneration Commission take full responsibility for this matter. You know, once you institutionalize constitutional bodies taking responsibility for their mandate, and therefore also taking full responsibility for the implications of whatever action they take, then you introduce a certain level of certainty and a certain level of discipline in the manner in which you deal with this matter. And therefore, for me, the solution is just that. Let the Salaries and Remuneration Commission now take responsibility for this. But in the meantime, all obligations that have been committed to by previous governments have to be honored, really, because an obligation is an obligation. I recall when I chaired the Justice Committee of Parliament a few years back, I recall my committee grappling with a CBA executed between the Moi regime and the Kenya National Union of Teachers in 1997. And this CBA had taken forever to roll out, to implement. And the question was whether the then government, that was the coalition government of Right Honorable Raila and Kibaki, were responsible for it. And the committee found in no uncertain terms that every successive government inherits obligations.
But it is one government.
Yes, it is a government. It's a continuum. Yes. And so the responsibilities that we have already committed to ought to be honored. And as we do this, then allow the Salaries and Remuneration Commission succeed to this responsibility, and then give it the space to fully execute its mandate. For instance, when the Salaries and Remuneration Commission reset the salary scales, allowances for all public officers and state officers, including members of parliament, that must have been in the month of July, I believe. I applauded that move because it showed them that the Salaries and Remuneration Commission was starting to ascend to a responsibility we handed it in 2010 with the enactment of the new constitution. But you see, succeeding to that responsibility is a gradual process.
Okay.
What we cannot argue against is the responsibility that we have already committed to.
If you signed it, stick to it,
yes,
and actually implement it,
yes,
because the government is indeed one. Time for us to take a break. Now that my panel is full, we can now discuss the politics of the day. When we come back to the streets, NASA insists starting Monday they're back to the streets to agitate for a fresh election. There's also issues of People's Assembly, as announced earlier this week by NASA leader Raila Odinga. Also, we'll be looking at the big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation: sons of their fathers. Two great families that shaped the destiny of the nation for more than 50 years. When they clash, the country trembles. Where will the headstrong sons lead Kenya this season of conflict? Are we dealing with a family feud here? That after the break.